Well, my name is Béla Pető, and I'm a professional painter. I was always doing this and teaching exactly the same thing, teaching art, whatever is really close to this or related intimately, such as drawing, color, different techniques. This is an acrylic technique. Something, although this is, if people say, well, this is a kind of impressionistic painting, well, forget about it. Monet did not have these kind of paints at his disposal. I think the history of Impressionism would be different if acrylics would have been invented. Well, after painting so many scenes at St. Paul, Minnesota, Duluth, Minnesota, Stillwater, Minnesota, then going over to Europe and working in southern France, in Paris, in Italy, mostly in Venice. I decided to try my luck, with the local scenery. And during the summer, I was very pleasantly surprised by seeing this kind of nice little development, and of course everybody knows what this is, the Mexican village, but those two buildings, and I'm not talking about a kind of archaeological reconstruction or the way an architect would represent a building, showing each and every piece of stone or the kind of interior work of a window or all the brickwork in here, same thing in here. See, the way a painter sees the world is both reduced and both enhanced. Reduced in the sense that you are deprived from all that kind of sweet little detail. For example, somebody pointed out this to me, that this is a door carved by Joe Connell. Well, there is absolutely no evidence of the painting about this. It is just a kind of nice red streak here, which is harmonizing with the reds around there. So it is, everything is translated in terms of color and simplified shape, that is, we are not getting into the intricacies of what kind of arch this is, as long as it is a kind of pointed arch in a kind of general sense. For a painter, this does the trick. Why? Because the painter is interested not so much what the building looks alone, but what it looks like when where there are a bunch of trees, and then the sky, and then what happens next to the building, what happens on this side, what happens here. And so this principle that everything is somehow relating to everything sounds like ecology, but the artists were there already. They realized that if you use certain kind of rats in here, perhaps you have to do something here, something here, something there. And basically the same colors are coming back all over the place. These blues are more or less related to the blue of the sky or to this blue, and again these orangish purples, and variations are coming back. Sometimes the color comes back in a very pure form, or with these turquoises, you cannot get much cleaner than that, or some of these yellow highlights. So life is translated into color interaction, and not so much visual inventory of how many little elements are here. Oh, one is missing. Oh, gee, this is missing. Yes, this is missing. Oh, this is missing too. Wow, this is a bad painting. Well, it ain't, because it works by its own laws and not the laws of kind of minute representation, which is basically all right for an architect or for a photographer. So in this kind of manner, St. Cloud is not any different than any of the bigger cities, Marseille or Venice or Nice, and indeed this is because of the traditional architecture. This is definitely here. You see a little bit of an Italian Renaissance in in this building, well, I'm sure this is not so much a Renaissance, it's something else. This is definitely with these arches, you know, Mediterranean, and there is a kind of nice continuation here. This is not the asphalt roof, as you can see, but you see all over the place. So it's the kind of, what is this, the tile roofs here, you know, I don't know the exact name. So you see, this creates a kind of nice, colorful sense. And if you had any doubt that this is a kind of warm climate, you know, what we have around here, here are the people enjoying themselves, you know. This is excluded, you know, and he is, I guess he cannot afford Java, you know, or $3 or $4 coffees, what's going on in here. Here is a little bike here, a girl is just parking or perhaps just taking off. There are people reading, discussing, again somebody is reading. So it is a little bit of a life here, and indeed, this is not the concoction of the artist, because these people put out those chairs and tables, although not too consistently. You know, at one occasion when I started, indeed this was the case, and then I came back the same time, everything was gone. So I went inside, asked the manager what happened to the furniture out there. Oh, we don't put these things out if the weather forecast says that there is a chance for afternoon storms or rain. So I told them, look, I tell you something, I guarantee you. Say, I don't believe in meteorology. You know, surprised that manager is a kind of grown-up man and still he has some mythological beliefs. So yeah, I told them, look, you know, nothing is going to happen while I painted this, you know. And he looked at me, and a strange guy, you know, but then I was on his back, so finally he put back everything. Sure, I finished the painting around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. There was supposed to be rain. Well, the rain never came, but at least the painting is accomplished. Well, then the subsequent history of the painting is quite interesting because it has brothers and sisters. Once I realized that St. Cloud is paintable, the fancy word is picturesque. Once that quality has been established, I did something which is, one is called around Seattle, and then a kind of long view going down to the Paramount. So it became part of a series. And as such, I showed this for a few times, and of course people like this and they were oohing and eyeing. Nobody was interested in buying this. So I said to myself, anybody who likes this, you know, can have it. You know, well, I don't want to get into the kind of history of ownership. You know, that's a different deal. But even so, the painting remained rather popular. So ended up on the cover of the 205 St. Cloud Chamber of Commerce. You see, the colors have been really souped up. If you compare this part of the foreground, can you see this, and now we are getting into here in this area. Well, ain't that sweet? You know, this looks like a bunch of cantaloupe and ice cream thrown out here. You know, in my painting it is very modest. But of course, this is an artwork. This is supposed to be an eye-catching, rather loud cover, you know, which is standing out from the rather gray masses of zillion publications that people throw out. So it works with a different purpose, in a different function. Well, I might just go back to this and do another one, perhaps sitting here, you know, and getting a different angle instead of emphasizing this, you know, perhaps emphasize this. You know. I never know. I have to make a on-the-spot decision. Well, I guess this should do the trick. I am just the PR man, which is.
You got the easy job.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. Now, finally, I deserve this. Okay. Well,
Showtime, I'm ready.
shall I start with introducing myself
Yes,
again? My name is Béla Pető, and I am the artist who painted this work. And this is, if anybody would not recognize, this is the downtown St. Cloud with some characteristics, landmarks in the background. You see, this is the Paramount building, and then some nice old buildings such as Ed Zepp's headquarters. The Zepp Bank was here. Right now, I don't know what happens here, but anyway, these are nice little establishments. To be frank, this painting did not come first. First came the Mexican village, but I realized that I am on the right track with the Mexican village, and I figured out what happens if I systematically explore the main street, going basically further and further out on the same track. And indeed, I found this corner very interesting. At least this was my first impression. And of course, impressions and final results are different. Sometimes you think that, this is going to make for a good painting, and it does not. Sometimes something where you have very little hopes might turn out very interestingly. But I had some good feelings about this one when I started. I was just intrigued by the kind of visual richness of what happens in here. And as you can see, these trees are cutting out a painting within the painting. So let's assume that the whole painting burns down and all that area disappears, and then only that survives. You are not going to throw this thing out in the garbage, you are going to frame this, and it works. So, but we are not that far. I wanted to catch as much as I could, although frankly, I am not too impressed by that kind of geometric rigidity of modern architecture. Some people might know me that I ain't too much of a friend of the kind of Bauhaus type oversized concrete shoeboxes. Well, at any rate, this is not a class in architectural criticism. It is something which I try to share my ideas, what really motivated me here. What motivated me was the kind of open space in spite of all, because you see these trees are producing natural screens and natural curtains which are going down. For example, this tree is totally preventing the viewer to see the front of the Paramount. So on the other hand, we are more titillated by trying to figure out, all right, something has to go on beyond and behind this tree. And to a certain extent, the same thing in here. You see this tower here, perhaps it has a kind of interesting continuation. This is denied because of the trees, so there is a kind of intriguing puzzles. So there is a kind of dirty little game going on in here. On the other hand, there is one kind of general swoop, or even sweep in this case, namely the power of the perspective we call foreshortening, how these buildings disappear, so to speak, in a kind of quick sequence, almost like Bonnie and Clyde zooming through downtown of a small town, shooting up some people. Well, nothing of that is happening in here. You see, there are two lovely secretaries smoking. Some people don't like our smoking laws. Perhaps from a humanitarian point of view they can be discussed, but certainly they helped me because both of these young ladies were smoking, so otherwise they wouldn't have been here. If you cover this thing up, this is still a kind of lively painting, but how much more this adds, by those two figures. Now, people think that success of a painting depends on how many details you can clearly see. Well, you have very much of a tough time seeing the features of this, whether she has a little potato nose or a different kinds of nose. I don't even know where the 2 feet is. These girls, technically, they don't have any feet. Yeah, see, if this would be a photograph, we would be jumping up and down. Somehow the sign language or the kind of code of painting is not working along these lines. Once you create the sense of these girls, as a matter of fact, she is crossing her finger. This one is turning toward her. Some bare essentials. Somehow we put up with this. We are not asking for more. Ooh, is she having a sneakers or a kind of high heel, or let's see, what kind of cigarette is she smoking? These are totally irrelevant. Perhaps in a photographic documentation, they would have a place. Not here. The idea is that how much they blend in and still at the same time how much they preserve their uniqueness. And the same thing holds true for all these stenographic marks. There is a red patch in here, a yellow patch in here, another red patch in here. But the whole thing, in its total context, yes, it ends up to a kind of colorful display of these different kinds of signboards. The same thing holds true with the cars. Now, is this a Chevy? Is this a Lincoln Continental? Or what is this? Is this a Chrysler? In a photo, it would make sense, to try to get the identification. Here, not. What we know that this is a friendly, sunshiny deal. This not. You see, there are sinister forces here, these dark bluish greenish colors. Suddenly you disappear. There are kind of abysses, quote unquote, opening up. These cars are becoming a kind of faceless kind of invasion army, which are lurking in the darkness, surrounded by sweet little colorful passages like this and like this. But see, this gives the tension. This makes the painting alive. If everything would be evenly sunshine, we would not get this kind of tension going. And this tension is the one, which keeps our attention going. For example, here, you see there is a huge cast shadow of all that block, and there is just a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. You see some people try to go in that direction. So this has a kind of little bit of a symbolic power too, that yes, you see the at the end of the tunnel you see the light. So although there are lots of dark forces in here, there is enough which counteracts them. Another artistic problem was, what do you do with these cast shadows? Obviously this is a tree in here which is shadowing, the tree is out here, cast the shadow here. For a photographer, perhaps this would be a nuisance and annoyance, but for a painter, this is establishing the space, that indeed before you get there, you have to go through here, 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 and here. And of course, these kind of irregularities, like these bay situations here, might drive a city engineer crazy. Why is this not a straight line? Well, thank God it is not, so it gives me the chance of playing to a certain extent the kind of hide and seek, which we'll see here on the bottom of the cars too, this, if you would be a rat, for example, you would have lots of fun in reappearing, disappearing in these cast shadows. Another thing, people have a kind of preconceived idea that if we are talking about a blue sky, which is the case in here, this is, these kind of glorious fall days, middle of September, very early October, I don't know exactly when, but those are those nice 70 degrees days, when people for the last time enjoy the beauty of the changing seasons. So people assume that a blue sky is uniformly blue, as if some divine house painter would have been painting a kind of set behind all these buildings, Well, as an artist, I had to realize that in order to bring out that kind of very intense, bright facade, I had to zoom down into a different mode, change the so-called key. Now I hate to be too technical. That means the shading, whether it is lighter or darker. Plus, you see the color here, and I don't know how well this can be represented there. You see these nice blues all over the place here, and then there is a little greenish thing in here. But already here, these darker greenish blues take over, so the contrast, which is really emphasized, by that black line, is fantastically great, So this is the only spot, when there is such a high contrast between the sky and between the building. So this area has one kind of a sky. This area has another sky. Another kind of a sky. Now, as far as the law of physics is concerned, this is total nonsense. The sky is one big continuum. You cannot get a pair of scissors and start cutting different sections up. So again, scientific observation is so different from artistic observation, because artistic observation is really stage management. These are actors, and you give different backgrounds to different actors. So if anybody naively believes that, oh, this just looks like real, oh boy, it is about as artificial as you can imagine. It is an edited, even if you wish, manipulated nature. What is the result? The result is not a fake. It is more of a nature than nature is. So in this case, we have a pope we have a Catholic person who is more Catholic than the pope. And that's all right, because this is basically a play. A drama. This is not Saint Cloud. This is a stage where Saint Cloud is being played. This is the name of the piece. It's not Hamlet, and this is not I don't know whatever Kiss Me Kate tonight. But we play. Perhaps we don't have to pay for it either. But we play Saint Cloud. This is the title of the piece. Well, I guess from my narrow artistic point of view, this is all what I have to say about this, but this is by far not the end of the story. Step number 2, or if you wish, step number 3 would be this. You remember how much time I spent on this, that this might just be an independent painting. So the artist is at the same time a researcher. So if there is a kind of interesting suggestions coming up with the, within the research material, the next week is going to be spent on exploring this, and indeed this is what was happening. So I think without any further ado we can get into the other painting. Well, thank you very much for your attention for this one. Okay, cut.
Awesome. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
So we are on on the retreat here. Okay, I guess we can start. Are you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. All right, I promised a kind of sequence or sequel to like these fashionable Sharks 1, Sharks 2, you know, this is the Shark 3. Well, my name is Béla Pető, and as you see from the signature, I am the artist who painted this picture, and perhaps this picture per se might not be familiar to you, but in our previous segment I alluded to the fact that, you remember, I framed a little area there, and I said that we should explore what happens in between those two trees. Well, this is what happens. You can see that now the trees are gone, so there is no hide and seek or no peekaboo there. As a matter of fact, this is just the perceptual opposite of the previous one. There is a huge space in front of us. Half of the painting is really foreground, and with some exaggeration, the other half of the building is sky. What is going on in here? Well, there is a bigger framework, a kind of bigger reference here, that this is a Midwestern town which is flat, infinite expansions, you know, of space and infinite height and expansion of the sky. So, to a certain extent, this little man-made strip is by nature's grace there. You know, this is not natural. The natural would be a big horizon line here, big sky, big ground, forget about the rest. Well, the rest is here, and it is a kind of human intrusion to something which was perhaps not supposed to welcome all that. At any rate, I was fascinated by the stage-like quality of these buildings. You see the stylistic boogie-woogie, you know, it is just jumping from one period to the other. You see, this was Mauresque. It was inspired by Spanish architecture of the 12th and 13th centuries of the Muslims, the Mohammedans, who were living in the southern part of Spain. And then we go back to, I don't know, European Romanesque period, high Middle Ages with these massive arches. I have a hard time figuring out what this is supposed to be. Here you see a kind of little bit of a Renaissance restraint here. These buildings are basically closely, especially this is closely related to that. The Paramount building, which is now coming to full view, in contradistinction to the other painting, is a kind of Art Nouveau thing, and this is a kind of, the bank building is a kind of, you barely see it, you know, again, a kind of compromise between modern architecture and between historical periods. Very few people are here just pushed to the side. There are some people approaching us. Originally, I tried to, I don't know, I just felt very uncomfortable with this amount of space here. You have to do something with this besides these huge cast shadows of the lamp pole here, I guess, on that side. So I asked somebody, I guess it was a strolling boy or girl, to sit here. This is a kind of flower bed or a flower superstructure or whatever. And what happened? That figure, instead of being that small, it was really filling up this area, and suddenly it turned out that the emphasis, the whole subject, is this figure, and everything else is background. Well, this was not my intent, so I said to myself, I just have to live with this. Plus, of course, a painter has a kind of secret weapon, and this is color. So what you can see, I turned loose an orgy of subtleties here. You see these sweet little pink colors, and now suddenly a blue. What I did, I suspect, I just grabbed something out of here, put it down here. To make things even worse, echoes of this blue are moving in here to make things even worse. You see, my signature is again done in blue with the intention. Otherwise, these things would have been awful hot, just pinks and oranges, which is, of course, dominant theme, color theme in here. It was fun to paint this, because I didn't know whether to take these things seriously, how to treat them as major architectural landmarks, or sweet little kids, running around the ice cream parlor, picking up different strawberries and lemon and strawberry and, what is this? I don't know, something. So I decided to create a kind of cheerful feeling about this, as if these buildings would have been happy to be tolerated by the sky and by the ground. As I said before, it was a kind of sweet intrusion. Again, some of the tricks, which I used in the previous painting. You see this kind of cast shadow here, which segments this road in two pieces. So again, you have that kind of more sense of depth. But I tried to avoid to get into too many details. It is just interestingly enough, the buildings are characterized not so much but by their architectural profile, but what kind of awnings, what kind of shop sign or signboards they have. So instead of emphasizing this upstairs, this is the crux, this is the main color theme of the whole thing. And again, you remember I put my hands up. Once I knock this colorful sequence out, I don't mean the whole thing falls apart, but certainly it loses a great deal. Another thing, which you don't see in the previous thing, now in the previous painting, here I had enough sky to work with. So I introduced these sweet clouds, which are just very easygoing and to a certain extent emphasize this playful action what is in here. As a matter of fact, they personify it. They make it as a kind of model as far as movement is concerned, for these elements. Again, if we are looking at the whole thing from the point of view of the architectural historian who is making a very careful pen and ink drawing, of all the columns, all the cornices, and how this was solved by the architect, or all these Mauresque. They are very nice elements. But this is not an architectural rendering. It is a kind of poetic recreation of something which was there. I am sometimes accused, oh, this guy doesn't have any imagination, he is just working from nature, and he is, if you take a photo, more or less you get the same kind of impression. Well, this is very far from the truth, These things are carefully edited, recreated, things are added, things are emphasized, things are taken out. So it is, they go through that kind of creative process, which is part of seeing and part of the mind, which is making judgments. So from that point of view, I think this introduces a little bit of a different sound, because both of these previous paintings, you remember the Mexican village and the other, which I just discussed, they were dense, if you were a bird, you couldn't fly all over the place. Here, yes, you can fly out and end up in Fargo, North Dakota without any kind of impediment. Same thing in here, you zoom back toward us. So that kind of sense of freedom, and at the same time a sense of fragility, that this thing is really wedged in between the powers of this and between the powers of that. So what else is there? So you see, it's a kind of different existential stance, different existential conditions, and although again people think, that, well, the painter's task is, there are signs, some lawyers are here, and those white signs were supposed to be mentioning all these names, but this is irrelevant, we are talking about more essential things in painting than these kind of, well, pettiness. I don't know, perhaps this is too harsh of a word. I think, I did not expect that I am going to paint 3 paintings basically of the main street of St. Cloud. I said to myself, if I paint, then I better go out and see the quarries or Beaver Island. And indeed I did this. Perhaps we can have another series of that, but not now. But somehow these 3 became a kind of organic unit, and I am just as surprised as a mother who is giving birth to 3 kids instead of none, because these kids were not planned, so, and I don't know, Planned Parenthood and me might not be mixing too well as far as artistic creation is concerned. Well, I think you might enjoy these things individually, and certainly you should, but in a sequence, they really mutually reinforce each other, and perhaps it is for some realists, quote unquote, this is too much of a kind of optimistic, quote unquote, representation of St. Cloud. This is not how people perceive it. I don't know. Because see, unless I am a commercial artist, I paint not somebody else's perception, but I paint my own perception. And of course, again, people like it or not, but certainly once you look at these things, then you have to take it or leave it, or in case of the owner, he is the one who has to live with this. So I think this is all what I can say about these 3 paintings, and I am very grateful that somebody is, let's hope somebody is going to listen. Thank you again. So, well.
Awesome. That was awesome. So you actually said that you had a young person sit probably.
Oh yes, yeah,
here.
I get a girl. I said to myself, okay, honey, what are you doing? Oh, no, you better sit down. And I think if you have an X-ray eye, you would see that this is somehow surviving. There
Yeah.
is a human figure underneath here.
I see it.
Yeah, yeah,
I love that.
Yeah, but yeah, perhaps you see some of these shadow there, you know, but you really need fantastic chemical and X-ray knowledge, you know, to bring this thing out. For all practical purposes, she is buried forever there, you know. But as a kind of a wretched artist goes through this kind of wrenching decisions. Now, what shall I do with this? You know, and okay, you try this, then it works or doesn't work, you know, and finally you have to make a decision. You know, okay, either it goes this way, that way. And so I took a risk. I said to myself, damn it, you know, I just leave it here.
Right.
Okay, so, and especially in the sequence, you know, if all three of them would be working with this kind of approach, it would be a crashing ball, but this is the only one. So it is, again, that tension is there.
Well,
you know?
it definitely is that's the thing I felt was it's like we're on the plains and you're going to Fargo.
Yeah, that's
it is.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
I
it.
see in here. Cowtown, almost like a cowtown.
Yeah, it is. So in the two other things, you know, I created a kind of sweetly false impression that this is a very dense Mediterranean town, you know, because you see things were on top of each other. Here I said, folks, let's wake up, you know, this is the Midwest. Okay, so this is the kind of.
How did this black line kind of come here?
Oh, boy, I should have mentioned this thing, you know, but I don't know. This is a stop sign in here, you know, and it is supported, the red light is supported by a huge cantilever. Can you see this? Huge cantilever light in here, which was really making a big red blob in here and cutting in front of all these buildings, you know, so it was just too much for me. I said to myself, forget about it. So I knocked it out, you know, but not 100%. And now it is. See, I wish I would have done this with the figure. Then, now in a ghostly manner, this is still there.
Yeah.
It doesn't bug me. You know,
I don't either. I like it.
Because it is an extra little kick, you know.
Right. It's a little bit of grit on the bricks. It adds a little bit of.
Yes, it is because we have this kind of visual noise sometimes, you know, things are standing in the way, you know, which should not be, but this is our life experience.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Oh, I love it. I think it's just fabulous.
You know, over the years, I'm not going to be around for too long, you know, but, in your case.
I almost left last summer, you know.
I know that you almost kicked the bucket, you know, last summer, you know, and it is, but, you know, especially when, I don't know, some developer is coming here, you know, and knocks out all this, puts a high rise here, you know, these things are going to be absolutely precious, you know.
Right. But, you know, that's why I got this painting, is because this building here is such an important part of my life.
Yes, Mom. You know, well, we are through.
Yeah, we're
That's
done.
great.
Yeah.
He gets an
Did
A.
an awesome job.
I got an A today. You know,
An
so.
A today.
So did Jim. He is a pro.
I don't know. We'll
Well-
see. But I'll edit it out and definitely get you a copy.
Yeah. Well, we still have to do the other.
Before I tear down.
Yeah.
Is I zoomed in on this, and from this point, even though I think. Never mind. I was going to have you put that back up there and let me get a little footage, but I don't think I want to do that. I won't need to do it because when I do, if I do edit. Now the other thing is when I made my first one.
Yeah.
Remember my purpose was this is mine, and if I want to go look at that door,
Yeah.
I could. And what I tried to do at first, I was zooming in a little bit, and then I backed off and says, no, I wanted to see you go like this.
Yeah.
Of course, I had the mirror in the background like the other
Yeah.
one. And I thought it just worked out so sweet.
Yeah.
And you were really, really excellent. And you know what's fun for me is now that I own them, I actually was listening to you for the first time, tell me about this.
Yeah.
First time telling me about
Yeah,
this.
yeah, because see, most people, they don't give a damn, you know,
Right.
oh wow, this is your problem. You put it, a girl in here, you know, was she good looking? Yes, she was good looking, you know, but then this was the problem, you know. Imagine that sweetheart being, throwing her
Right.
in here,
Right.
you know, sitting in a kind of attractive position. Who gives a damn about these things?
Right.
Everybody is concentrating
Right,
here. you
right.
know.
Yeah, and that was a very, very smart move to do that. In fact, at first I was disappointed with all of this space.
Yeah.
But then I became more fond of it, and I would be looking at those colors that you were pulling in here.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the depths of the colors, knowing where this is and stuff. So I became more intrigued with this area.
Yeah.
But now knowing that this is where that girl was sitting, and it's just like the painting you did for the St. Ben's out there, how you had.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
remember,
yeah.
I went through hell with this,
I
you
know
know,
it.
because I wanted to do something else,
Right.
you know, what they had in mind,
Right,
you know,
right.
so.
Well, that's you have a schedule too.